guys, my name is Seth from AFilmClan, and today I'm bringing you part 2 to how to make a sci-fi weapon effect in Blender. Like I said in the previous tutorial, this is sort of a mimic of Andrew Kramer's sci-fi weapon effect for After Effects, and I decided it'd be kind of fun just to show you guys how to do this in Blender. And so this effect is what we're going to be making today. As you can see, we do have those gun lights, and I have basically 3 effects that we're going to be working on today. One is going to be this little light you see inside of the gun to make it look like it's shooting. The second one is going to be a simple little muzzle flash, and the third one is going to be this sort of a Shockwave-flash that goes around the barrel. Gives it a little bit more of a blend to the entire scene, and so that's what we're going to be making today, and hopefully if everything goes right, this shouldn't be too long. So yeah, let's jump right straight into Blender and see what's up. So guys, first thing that you're probably going to notice is that this is the same scene that we had before. The nice little blue lights on here. But the first thing that we need to do in order to make those effects is we're actually going to need to go over to the motion tracking thing. And for some odd reason, every single time that I've saved the motion tracking data with this right here, we had these masks set up so as to follow the path. It was glitching out for me. So right at this point right here, you can see it actually jumps over, and so I don't know, because of some sort of an error to Blender, it was messing it up, and so I have to actually go and move this back over to a proper keyframe and keyframe this back, which is kind of weird, but I guess it's a couple of keyframes, so it doesn't really matter that much. But I don't know, maybe if you know more about Blender, you can tell me why this is happening. It would be kind of nice to know exactly why it is, but it's really just a couple of keyframes that you have to fix, and so just make sure that you have that down before you try to render this out. I know a lot of people have laptops and stuff, and so yeah, that looks pretty good. Actually, I'm not gonna fix that. Alright, this is not a the gun lights tutorial that was in the last one, and hopefully if you guys haven't seen that, it'd be pretty good. But anyway, let's go ahead and create our mask for the Muzzle-flash, which I think is kind of the coolest one. So we're gonna go to frame 43, I believe. That's where the motion begins, I think. Actually, it's frame 40. So we want everything to sort of start at frame 41, but let's go ahead and make it in frame 40 just for now. So I'm going to call this Muzzle-flash so that we know where it is. And let's just go ahead and start making a little flash wave effect sort of around, around it. You can look at some reference photos, which is highly recommended, but just creating something very simple to kind of portray the fact that something's actually coming out of the muzzle of it, or the barrel, whatever you want to call it, and then we can fix it up and see that. Just kind of moving everything around. You know, like I said before, you can look at reference photos just to give it an idea, but I already kind of know what I want. So just something super simple, kind of have it very small and just something sort of focusing around here, and then this big stream coming out of it. It will be blurred, and I'll apply a couple effects to it so you won't really see any of the real big shapes to it, but that's about what we want right there. So yeah, that's it. So what we're going to do is going to press A twice and keyframe it, and go ahead and scale it down a little bit so that It's right kind of inside of the barrel, and then move it to where it is at. With I, there you go. Then right here, I want it to be kind of really big. I want it to move forward and get really big at the start and kind of fade out as it goes along. So like right here, I want it to be kind of really big, and kind of just fitting this little area around the main muzzle of it. And you can even rotate it a bit if you want to. And press AI to keyframe it. And then, as you can see things start to slowly get smaller, so I'm just kind of scaling it down a little bit. That's an instance where you see like these two frames are exactly the same. I have no idea why that is, but it is. So I'm just going to press I again, so that's the same keyframe. And then move down slowly again. And then right about here is where everything should stop. It should get really small. Then I'll press I. Then what I'll do is, on the frame exactly after it, I'll press I right up here. And then let's move forward to the frame where it's just about to fire, which is 56. I'll press I right here, 55, go back down here to 56, move it down here, fit it right on top, press I again, and just kind of scale it, just kind of eyeball it. We can do some cleanup afterwards if we need to. But right there, as you can see, it's just huge kickback, so we want this big flash to come out and make it look like something big's happening, if you know what I mean. Because that big kickback there. And then the slow dispersion around the end of it. And right about here is where it's going to end. And then I'll just make it really small there at the end. And then move it up. And there we go. And so let's go ahead and move back down here to 40 and do the same thing. We'll remove it up here and press I. And so now if we take a look at it, let's go back to the very beginning. Boom, 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 boom. You can see that that's happening. It does look slightly slow, but we can mess around with some of the things in the compositor to make it look better. But that's about what we want. We just kind of want to go out and just come back in. So that's good for the muzzle flash. Let's go ahead and move straight on to the Shockwave-flash, as I like to call it, which is just basically a more fanned out version of the muzzle flash. It gives it things a little bit more detail. So let's go to 40 and stay there. So what we're going to do is basically create a big spike ball around here. So just something kind of simple. You can go as crazy as you want to with this. But if you notice in a lot of photos, there's a big shockwave, a big muzzle flash, and then there's usually some sort of a shockwave or something like that. And I felt like it just created a bit more of a sci-fi sort of a feel. And you can create as many shapes as you want to using this method. It's fairly simple to create these effects once you know how to do it. And I always recommend you try some things of your own. So I'm going to press I and scale this down really small. And then the next frame, I'm going to kind of bring it up to about half the size that I want it to. And then the next frame, when it kicks back, is really big. Create it kind of super big, because I want to make it look like it's super powerful. And then the next frame, I just kind of bring it down slowly. And the same frame again, 43 and 44 are the same frame, which is one of those things you'll have to probably keyframe every time you want to do a fresh render. Just make sure you check your motion tracking. That way nothing weird happens, because I was noticing before that a lot of like the gun lights and stuff are kind of wobbly and stuff, and it looked really weird. So I'll just kind of scale that down a bit more. And then 46 is the final frame where everything sort of comes back in. Right there at 47, we're just going to bring that up top and press keyframe. Then we're going to go to frame 56. So actually 55. Press I to keyframe it back up here so it doesn't move during this time. And back down at 56. We're going to move it. Press I. And then we're going to move it to about half the size that we want it to. I want it about like that. Side. Grab it again. Scale it up at 48. And then just kind of slowly disperse it down. Right at 62 is where I want kind of everything to kind of just, go back in and then bring it back up here. And another cool thing that you can do, so let's go ahead and view what it looks like. Oops. So let's go back to 40. I forgot to keyframe it off of it. So 40 and go up to 39 and just keyframe it up there. So one thing you'll probably notice is that it goes and kind of comes out, and it looks great actually. That looks really nice. What you can do is you can actually go over to here and just kind of rotate it. And rotate it a bit more. And it creates sort of just a different sort of feel to it. And so let's see right here. It creates a little bit of distortion so it doesn't look the same, which is always really nice. And so you can just do a little bit of rotation if you want to on some of the stuff. But now I think is my favorite one. I saved my favorite effects for last. It's I like to call it barrel lights, because that's essentially, I think, one of the best ways, or barrel flash if you want to do that, but I call it barrel lights. Anyway, so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to create a simple square inside the muzzle right here. Or maybe not a simple square. And this is essentially going to guide my my muzzle flash. So close that off with Alt C. So anyway, if you're wondering what some of these keyframes are, just give me a comment, or I might even put it in the description. Not keyframes, shortcut keys. So anyway, what we're going to do is we're just going to press I, and so we're going to keyframe the entire footage of it, and I might even put it into time lapse because it's just simple rotoscoping. And that basically will allow us to get the effects that we want. And we're going to be using some textures and some other really cool things in there to give it the glowing effect, to make it look like there's a bunch of energy kind of pulsing through the system as it's building up to it, which will, I think, greatly, increase the detail of the scene, as you saw in that video before, which will be kind of fun, I think. But anyway, I'm gonna go and do a little time lapse and be back with you guys in a little bit. So I hope you guys enjoy the music and everything, and I'll be back. Alright guys, I'm done. So let's just do a quick playback and see what everything looks like. Yep, the motion track looks very stable. You don't need to have it perfect for the masking. It just needs to be, kind of within that barrel range. I'll be doing some effects and everything to get it worked up anyway. But yeah, just doing a quick look through all of our other effects just to see what they look like and if they need any adjustments. That, like I said, this might be a little slow for our Muzzle-flash, but then again, we are doing some other effects over it, and we're doing some stuff in the compositing where we can easily fix it. So that looks pretty good. Yeah, let's go ahead and jump over to the compositor. So this is our scene right where we left it off, and everything's fine with our color balance mode and everything else. We're not going to actually need these, so let's go ahead and just kind of close them up. We may not even need our viewer node right now. Let's just go ahead and move the composite node over here and set this to 50 so that we don't have to render everything out. Like I said before, if you are looking to get this footage, I will apply some links over to Andrew Kramer's video Copilot website, and all the, all the inspiration, and I think a lot of the credit does go to this guy, because he did a good job on the tutorial as far as the concepts alone. So yeah, go check out his tutorial. Anyway, let's go ahead and start creating some of these masks. And another way to do that, just going over to the add thing. Why isn't it going right? Let's go ahead and re-render that so that it'll show up better. Anyway, so let's go over here and go ahead and start making our Muzzle-flash. I think that should be one of the first ones to get in there. And let's go ahead and view it. So we're going to go to frame 40, and you'll see that, which is a huge and ugly looking motion blur with a 0.5 shutter. I prefer actually 0.3. If you're going to use a motion blur, you'll notice that it's just a little bit more clean. But yeah, we'll do a little bit of anti-aliasing, get rid of cleaner edges, and that should be good. So what we're going to do is we're going to first apply this node called, if I can find it, Sunbeams, and it's a new one in the filter section. Why aren't you showing up? So, and we're going to give it a ray length. Let's try something simple like 0.3. And you notice automatically that it's just really cool looking effect here. A lot of people, they use this. So if I created like a mask over here, I could set it up so that the sun, it would look like there's these beams of light coming through it, and it looks really cool. And so I've used this to my advantage. I thought I put 0.1. So we don't want anything too heavy, so something maybe like 0.2, maybe even that 0.3 would be just fine. And let's kind of adjust it to go maybe a little bit more forward. So let's do something like 0.45, and see if that works a little better. That looks just about right. You want a lot of light to be going forward, and so that's what I'm doing here. And also something else, if I go ahead and create a little, using our mix node, create a screening node. Screen node. You'll notice this. Everything's like weird. If I were to push this little thing that helps convert some of the alpha maps to it and everything, you'll notice that it's still looking very weird, and that's because of all this like weird stuff in the background. So you do the add node, and what that'll do is it'll actually just allow it to get rid of that. So that might be something if you guys were following along or do something like that. It helps it. Anyway, so let's go ahead and move over to our color correction, color balance. I keep on getting those things mixed up. You are correcting the color in a way, but it's not about that. Anyway, so we're going to go ahead and go with our blue theme. You can do whatever color you want. So I found that if you just sort of give everything a little bit of a blue, you kind of end up with something like this. If I increase the gain a little bit more, you'll notice that you get some much brighter looking results. And you do want it to sort of just pulse out here. That looks really nice, actually. Let's go ahead and move over to 42 where it's the biggest. And that looks great, actually. It looks really cool. And actually, let's get a little bit more blue in the midtones. Midtones meaning like right here, or even a bit more like this, because I want to get rid of that white a bit more. You have to kind of play around with it because it may not do the exact same thing for everybody. But that looks about right. You don't really need it, do it too much. It's moving so fast that nobody's going to just stop and say, well, I wonder how he did with that. Somebody might, but just for the sake of the time in this tutorial, let's do that. So what I went ahead and did is I keyframed those colors. And so if I move back down here to 40, you'll notice that we get something like this. We're actually going to move the colors down so as to get rid of that. Like that. And press I. Then move over to 41 and see what we get. So I want it to kind of like get really big and then boom, and then kind of work its way down. So if we move over, I think it's 46 where everything kind of disperses. So we're going to actually do the same thing. We're just going to move everything down to get a darker color, and you'll get something like that, and that's fine. Just press I on everything, and then there you go. And so that's essentially what you would want for the first one, the first effect, the Muzzle-flash. And that looks really cool. Right there. But we can do better. And what I mean by better is you can do this really cool effect called Dilate a Road Under Filter. And I do that, and I like to set it to feather. What did I just do? Oh, don't set it after the color. Set it for the color. Somewhere. Yeah. In between the color balance and that. So. And then I like to, if we go over here to 42, which is where our big one's at, you can smoothen it down just around these edges here. Take a little bit more. And it will kind of eat / erode off of it, but it'll just help a bit. And you can use this right here, so if I say, oh, that's a bit too big or something like that, you can kind of eat away at it a little bit with this effect and get something like that. So if you look here, this is the original, the after. Let's actually set so you get this. So yeah, that looks good. And yeah, that's just one thing that'll help you to play around with it and adjust it if something doesn't look right. But that looks perfectly fine. Let's go ahead and move on to our, where is it at? Shockwave-flash. So go ahead and create our new mask node, into aliasing, motion blur, 2.3. That's the golden number that I found so far. You can adjust it to whatever you want. And click Shockwave. Get rid of this viewer node just for now. And essentially we're going to be using almost the same exact setup here. So this is what we start out with on frame 40. So that looks fine. So just go here, blur. And we're going to use a color mix node to blend the two together. So let's go ahead and set that to the bottom, to the top. And we're going to set this to fast Gaussian. Let's do something like 30 and 30. See what we get. Ooh, nothing happened. Add maybe. Yep, there we go. And so that'll just give it a little bit more brightness to it. I was really hoping on that blur node, sunbeams node. Yeah, sometimes these effects don't work the way that you want them to. So let's go ahead and actually just put that back over there. Duplicate this add node. Put this in the bottom. Move this over here. And set this to something kind of outrageous like 100. Just give that nice, really cool glowing effect to it. And that looks fine. And so what we're going to do is we're going to set this color mix screen. Move that to the bottom. This over here to the top. This is what we get. And again, we're going to have to do the color correction or color balance node. So let's go ahead and add that in. Color balance. And we're going to set the color to that same blue color as before to get this. Let's go and move to 42 where all the big stuff happens. Oh, I was afraid of that. That was going to happen. Crap. So for some odd reason, sometimes like the effects, like if I were to like, I don't know, set that over here, you'll see that the effect looks perfectly fine, but that actually looks overpowering. So I'm going to filter, dialect red. We're going to use this node now, just so you're wondering. Use that to control everything. I'm going to set it to feather and -50. To it -80. That's what we'll get. Sometimes when you have these screen nodes, it's really weird. It'll actually like, I don't know, it'll add itself, try to add itself on top of it, something else, and it gets really weird. And I've tried to like fix it with something like that, or even like this, clicking those, and those don't work. So what you actually have to do is you have to render out the effect separately and get the movie file. And so even with that little fuzzy weird thing going on there, it looks really nice. So yeah, I'm kind of happy with that. So that looks great. The next effect that we're going to be working on, we'll render these out individually later. I'll show you how to do that. But for now, what we're going to do is we're just going to create that next effect, which I think is one of my favorite, like I said before, as an image node. Go and create a new mask. It's that barrel lights. I love that effect. There we go. That's perfect. That'll look fine. So let's see how that looks. So like I said before, this probably is one of the harder effects to do, but it's also one of the cooler effects out of them. So what we're going to do is we're going to go and start out with something simple. This filter road node is going to come in really handy. So I think my final effect, I had like -13, and it just kind of smooths down the edges and it makes it look really nice. And then I think the next thing that I did was I created a texture. So if we go over here to textures, new, I'm going to name this barrel lights. I don't know what else to call it, but I'm going to set this to clouds. Let's go ahead and go and see what that looks like over here. And essentially what this is going to do is going to allow us to create the textures inside of the barrel lights, so to get that effect that you saw in the beginning. And so let's go ahead and add something where we can add the two together, something maybe like a multiply node where it'll multiply the effects together. Can't really see it. Let's go ahead and set it into our composite mode just so we can zoom in on it. But probably the first thing that you're probably going to notice is that although it might be actually working, it's not doesn't have a high enough contrast or brightness to allow that to happen. Here's a little preview. So I'm going to set this to maybe something like 4, and it helps, but it's not exactly what we want. And so you can see it is actually affecting it, which is cool. But now we're going to need to change the size, and that looks really cool. Let's see what that does. A bit too much. So let's go back up to that 0.004. No, still too small. Let's erase 1 0, and we get something kind of like that, which is great. That actually looks really nice. And so hopefully by moving around in the scene, it's actually just mapping out differences. But what you can do is you can actually change the coordinates of these, which is something really cool. So let's go ahead and go to frame 1 over here, press I, and then go to frame 64, which is the end frame, and set all of these to something kind of like 45, 63, 72, and each one of those will just kind of help it to, you know, do something really cool and make it look kind of like it's actually doing something. Oops, did I not keyframe this? So 45, 63, and 72. I'm just picking random numbers and then keyframe it again. And so now it'll actually act like it's not one of the same textures and kind of pulses around and stuff. It's not going to preview it right now because it's not rendering out. I don't know why it doesn't do it when it's not preview, but it will work actually. So anyway, so now let's go ahead and add this in. So we'll duplicate our screen node in over here, and just to see how everything looks together, and bring that, oops, why was I selecting that? Bring this top of it into there. Let me get this, which is exactly what I want. So now we're going to use, we could actually almost use the exact same color, but we're going to animate this one slightly differently. So let's go over to color balance, click this, and let's go ahead and set all of our blue colors. Oh boy, that's right. And set it to this screen node over here. There we go. We're going to increase the gain on this a bit more though. There we go. What I might actually do though is create and put the dilate one after it. And what this will do actually is get this, like that, take this over here. What this will actually do, whoa, just allow us to control that right there, that effect. So anyway, so what we're going to do is we're going to keyframe this. So if we go to frame 40, let it refresh it a little bit. That looks great. It looks kind of cool actually. So what we're going to do is over here, this is where it should have the peak of its effect. So we're going to set the gain a little bit higher, everything just a bit higher, a little bit more intense blues all around. That should be good. So we're going to set I for that. So let's go down to maybe something like 33. Right here. So we're right here. We're going to actually set everything to go down darker. Press I. And what we're also going to do is go back to 40. And I know this is a little bit confusing, but what we're going to do is we're going to keyframe this mask, and we're going to actually erase some of this, because feathering it in a negative direction is like erasing it smoothly around the edges, so that it kind of just eats away at the mask a bit, so as to create a little bit cooler effect. So let's go back to 35, not 33, 35. And we're going to set this to something like negative, I don't know, negative 40. And press I on that. And what this will do is if we move forward a bit, let's see what this does. You'll see it's kind of like it's getting bigger. And then right here at its peak, it gets like really, really big. And then boom, everything fires, which would be kind of cool. So that's how it should be. Anyway, then what we're going to do is going to have it sort of at 45. It's going to get lower again, so we're going to move it back down to where it's kind of out of it, and press I on each and every single one. And it didn't change much because everything's sort of still dispersing. And then right when everything sort of the smoke clears and everything, we'll go ahead and set this back to where it's right here, and then move it to, I think it was 45 or 55, I think it was, when everything's just about to fire. Yep, so we're going to do right here at 56, where the peak of everything is. I'm going to go ahead and set it back up to wherever that was at. Give it that nice, really cool blue effect, and see what that happens. See what happens with that. I don't like the way that one's set up, though. Sometimes you got to play around with these effects, but just for the sake of time, I'm just going to keep it the way it is. It'll be cool. Oh, we need to set that down a bit because it's affecting the color of the screen. So anyway, that'll be fine, and just setting everything there, and then move to the end of the movie, bring everything back down like that. And so now if we were to play back the movie, it would actually show everything. But the only problem with this clip is that right at, I think, 40, when everything's actually going, we get like this really weird glitchy, that right there. And so what we're gonna have to do is render out these effects one by one and to create those effects. But before we do that, let's go ahead and add some glare effects to each one, just to give it that extra little oomph to make everything better. 9 streaks. This is for what? The Shockwave. So we don't need too much on that, so we'll just do this. Shift D, add some ghosts. That's probably the big one. And I like that it's like overpowering, and so I like the way that one is. And let's just duplicate these two, Shift D, and kind of add them into this. Yeah, and that looks actually really good. You don't want the glares, the ghosts to be too much, but that looks perfect. And so let's do the same and duplicate these and move it over to here. And put that into there and that into there. To really get this one, we're going to need to go to frame 41, I believe. That's where it was the peak. And that looks perfect, actually. So that looks really good. So now that we have everything set up the way that we want to, we're going to have to individually render out each and every frame. And so going over to our camera back up here, we're going to go and select this little drop down menu, and it's best to, like, for me, this is my second tutorial thing, I'm going to create the barrel lights first, just because I selected it, and create a new folder. So I'll just go ahead and create barrel, lights, FX, and then I'll do 1 and then an underscore like that, just to say that this is my first test, so I can adjust them later on. And then set the thing to 100%, go down over to here and click PNG, or even JPEG if you want to. And then now that we have that folder, you just click animate. So what I'll go ahead and do is pause the recording and render out each and every one using the same method where I select the effect that I want, put it into the compositor, let it render out, and then we can add just a movie in there later. And it's really annoying that we have to do this, but I really couldn't figure out any other way to get it to fix. And it's a good idea for like minor adjustments later on. Anyway, so I'll go ahead and render that out and be back with you when I've done all the 3 effects. Alright guys, so what I found out is after rendering out the shockwave effect, is I found that it did some weird stuff. So let's go over to frame 46, I think was it, where it did all the fun stuff. Anyway, it was really messing up the render, and I tried to correct it with some brightness nodes and stuff, but it wasn't helping at all. And what I figured out is I actually forgot to set the animation to this right here. So what I did is I ended up just setting a keyframe at 42 to get that brightness, because it might actually be a bit too bright. Let's look at it and see. And I like the way that looks and everything, but after going to right here, it's just way too bright. So I may actually have to, turn down the mix a bit. And I do like the way it's kind of over the top looking and stuff like that, but I don't really need that. So I was just gonna go ahead and press Control X to delete that, and I'll get something a little softer like this, and I'll kind of just turn down the mix to -6, just to give it a little bit nicer, softer glow, and that'll be just fine for what we have. So going back, I set another keyframe over here to 55 to make sure everything's dark. At 57, I set it back up to where it was supposed to be. I think I'm not supposed to set this. Just make sure that you get everything the way that you want it to be, and then at the very end I set one to be nothing. So what I'm gonna do is I'm actually just gonna go ahead and re-render out this right here, this effect, because it messed up. And you do these things, you're gonna run into issues like this all the time, and so yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. So I'll set everything back up to 100% and re-render everything and be back. Alright, so I finished rendering that little bit of footage, and hopefully I tried to overwrite what I already did. So let's go over to like frame 42 and see what happens. Okay, yeah, so it worked. I overrided the footage, and now if I add everything together, this is what I should get. Come on. Okay, yeah, we need to delete that, so let me delete it real quick. And looks pretty good. So this right here is the final effect-ish. I could probably do a lot more, and I feel like that might be still a bit too bright, but for the purposes of time and not wasting yours, I think this should be fine, just for now. And as you can see, everything looks really cool. So yeah, let me render out this entire this entire effect right here and show you guys. And then after that we'll close off, and I'll see you guys in the next video. So yeah, let me go ahead and do that now. Alright guys, so I just finished rendering and it looks like it's pretty good so far. So let's go ahead and jump right over to our final product and see how it looks together. So that looks actually really good. I don't know how well that it looks as compared to the other one, but I think it definitely looks really good. There's obviously some different things that you could do. If I just kind of move the thing over, you see that it gets, this part's a little bit more bright than that, which is I guess fine. And then the second pulse here, you see that this is definitely way brighter than that, so that's definitely something that you guys could fix, or just if I had more time I could do. But yeah, let's go ahead and look at it a couple more times. But yeah, hopefully guys, if you had followed along with this tutorial, this is what you should have ended up with, something kind of like this. And yeah, it looks really good. So I hope to see some of the results that you guys have done. But until then, I will be making the next tutorial. I don't know exactly when I'm going to put it out. I do have a lot of school and stuff. I'm trying to get under my belt and just figure out some of that stuff that comes with the new school year. But yeah, I'll definitely try to act as quickly as I can in creating these things, because they're a lot of fun and I know that a lot of you guys enjoy it. And yeah, anyway guys, I'll see you guys in the next video, and until then, have fun, and yeah, goodbye.